Fantastic. Lovely. So welcome everybody to our first Embodying Archetypes for Personal Growth introductory session. So today we're going to be going through, we're going to introduce you to 4 of the archetypes, and we're going to take each archetype in turn and explore their embodiment. And we're going to be doing that with where they show up in your life and how they can empower you, and also some ways in which the archetypes can disempower you and to give you some clues as to when that might be happening through your embodiment. So we're always going to be working through the body today. And I will share with you the details of the full 8-week course that we mentioned as part of the Eventbrite details. And I'm also going to give you the link at the end to be able to register for that full course if you feel that you'd like to do so. But in the meantime, we're just going to hopefully give you some really valuable information. Oh, we've got a second young man there on the screen. So hopefully I'm going to be sharing some really valuable information here for you so that as a sort of standalone thing, you'll be able to walk away from this with something that's really valuable. So the person that I normally run these courses with, Thea, is unwell, so she's not been able to make it. But Julie S. has stepped in very, very kindly from snowy Moscow to help with some tech and some background stuff. So if you've got any technical problems, then please feel free to private message her and she'll do the best that she can to help you. And if for whatever reason, maybe you're feeling a little bit wobbly, that maybe you're getting some emotional about certain things, because sometimes this embodiment work can be quite powerful, then feel free to private message Julie through the chat, and she'll be able to talk through with you on the chat how you're feeling and perhaps bring you down to a calmer place. So does everyone feel happy with that? If we can have either a thumbs up on the screen or do the little thumbs up icons on the actual thing itself, that's absolutely brilliant. So so let's get a sense of who's in the room. Where would you say your energy levels are if you were going to kind of bring your hands up and down? So down at the bottom of the screen is quite low energy, quite up at the top of the screen is high energy. How are we feeling today? Yeah, sort of middling. Yeah, okay, so Des is quite low, Lisa's quite high. Brilliant. Okay, great, thank you, that's good. Yeah, Wendy's feeling okay. Good stuff. Okay, so just to bear in mind that you know, self-care is the most important thing. So if you're feeling a little bit tired and you don't feel too resourced, then go easy on yourself. If you're feeling really, yeah, this is great, I'm feeling pretty good today because I'm out in front of you guys, then you know, feel free to push yourself a little bit, okay, and to take the most of this that you possibly can. So let's just start with a really brief introduction around the archetypes. So archetypes, very, very simply, are a model of human development. And I think the first time the archetypes kind of come up is with Plato, but then more recently, Carl Jung identified the 4 main archetypes that we're going to be working with today: sovereign, warrior, lover, and magician. And each of these 4 archetypes are often thought of as masculine focused. When I do this work, a lot of people ask that as a question. But it's in my experience that the feminine is equally present and powerful in each. So that's why we use the expression sovereign, so that you can have king or queen, however you feel. There have been lots of female warriors in history. It isn't just about warriors aren't just men. Of course, magicians, you've got wizards and witches as well. And of course, for the lover archetype, you have the masculine and feminine in that. So don't worry about getting caught up in that whole masculine and feminine thing. We'll explore both, and you'll be free to explore that in whatever way you feel that you'd like to. Also, each archetype has kind of like a useful yin and yang quality. So if you're familiar with that concept of sort of almost like polar opposites, but in a way they link together in a way that creates wholeness. We'll also be exploring that a little bit today within our embodiment. Okay, so. And then beyond Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, and some of you might have heard of him, he explored at great length how archetypes show up in different cultures around the world and throughout time. And he identified what he called the hero's journey, which is central to our full 8-week course. The hero's journey shows up in antiquity, in writings such as the Mesopotamian epic poem Gilgamesh. Some of you might have heard of that. The Hindu Bhagavad Gita, that hero's journey there is very prevalent. And of course, there are lots of hero's journeys in the Bible stories, both in the Old and the New Testament. And it also shows up in contemporary media, such as things like Star Wars and Harry Potter, and pretty much every Disney movie that you've ever seen is all about the hero's journey. Okay, a person that gets frightened or goes into hiding, and then the rest of the movie is about exploring the journey of how they get back to that and sharing that with the world. So some of you may have an intellectual understanding or an intellectual knowledge of archetypes, but it's very, very powerful to have an embodied and practical and experiential understanding of them as well. And it's that embodied experience, it's that embodied understanding that makes them a really accessible resource for you at work, in your relationships, and also in your personal life. So today we're going to be focusing on accessing the wisdom and insight of the archetypes through posture and movement, inspired by the Embodied Yoga Principles poses, which was something created by Mark Walsh. I'm just going to ask Julie to put the URL in the chat for the Embodied Yoga Principles course. And it's just got a really, really nice foundation in archetypes, and using some of those poses to access a lot of the resources that come from that. So some of these EYP poses are adapted to suit the archetypes more specifically, and we're going to be playing around with that a little bit as we go through the course today. And these poses are used throughout this 8-week course. So they're valuable information and practices that we give you today as a standalone thing, but also they provide a good foundation for the training that we're going to be covering should you choose to sign up. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to do these introductory sessions. So before we launch into that practical stuff, you might be asking yourself, well, who is this guy to do this stuff about archetypes? So I thought I'd just take a few minutes, if that's okay, to just give you a brief snapshot of my experience with archetypes and how I've come to be at this place. So I hope that that will sort of serve to give you some kind of a context. And I was going to share Thea's one, but I thought I'll just leave Thea to do that on the next free session that we run in a couple of weeks' time. Rather than talk about her, I thought I'd just talk about myself instead. So I hope you don't mind. So my journey with archetypes started with martial arts. Some of you know me and my martial arts past, but I've done 30 years of martial arts. And the introduction for me with archetypes was, of course, in martial arts was the warrior archetype. And from day one, I learned great techniques to defend myself and also to cultivate the focus and the commitment and the fierceness of warrior. It's something that I did right from the outset. And when I teach people, I do the same thing. But the landmark moment for me was a weekend training course where we did something called the Bogeyman Training. And this training was very violent, very aggressive, incredibly intense. And at the same time, it was also very, very safe. So it was a really great space to cultivate this warrior energy. And it was electrifying. And I felt so alive when I would do these sessions. And on that weekend, something really lit up inside of me that I learned over time to take into my everyday life that helped me with my focus on things, my commitment, taking action on stuff, being fierce when I needed to be, and to be disciplined to do what needed to be done. So all of those qualities are the qualities of warrior. And in the martial arts that I studied, we also did something that we referred to as modern Zen. And I know that both Lisa and Des are very familiar with this stuff. And these were ancient teachings given an up-to-date interpretation around things like values, purpose, managing change and uncertainty, leadership, and cultivating wisdom. And for me, this was the realm of the sovereign, supporting me in being able to manage my responsibilities, make a stand for myself, self-management, and how to enroll and inspire others in that leadership. So very early on, I was already kind of exposed to these two really powerful archetypes. And then the third archetype was the magician. And again, this was another one of these landmark moments for me where on a weekend course, we studied really unexpectedly, but we studied poetry and creativity. And the homework on this weekend course was to go away and write every day for 10 or 15 minutes and then burn what I wrote. And the point was to enjoy and cultivate the creative process and not to be attached to the thing that I wrote, but and not to judge it, but just to embrace the creative process. And a year later, I came back to my teacher and I said to him, well, I've written every day and I've burnt my bits of paper every day. Now what? What do I do now? And he said, keep writing, but don't burn it. Keep the work that you write and read it if you want to. But the most important thing is that you keep writing, you keep cultivating that ability to create and to write spontaneously. And so that's what I did. And I have piles of scrapbooks in my attic, in the bottom of my wardrobe, in the garage, of books that I've written in for the last 20 years or so. And I blog lots. So for those of you that know me, I do lots of blogging, at least 2 or 3 times a month. And I've published one book and I'm in the process of publishing a second. And so for me, this was the magician growing in me, touching into my creativity, my imagination. But it also led me to trust my intuition a lot more in pretty much every area of my life, be that in my relationships, in my teaching, in my work, and so on. And then finally, the lover archetype. So when I got to my black belt, which is the sort of the hallowed grade of martial arts, you can start teaching. And I began to develop the skills of building relationships with people, learning to connect with them, to build rapport and trust so that I could teach them effectively. And these are the qualities, or some of the qualities, of the lover archetype. And I took this further into my life coaching, and I also trained to be a Samaritan's listening volunteer. So for those of you that aren't in the UK, it's a sort of a helpline where people can ring and talk about their problems when they're feeling distressed. And it was that life coaching training and that Samaritan's training that helped me build my skills of rapport and listening and creating safe space, which of course is really important for things like facilitation and stuff like that. And then when I did the Embodied Facilitators course in 2019, which is where Thea and I met, I learned a lot about self-care, which is something that in martial arts isn't necessarily particularly focused upon. But I learned a lot about self-care and how essential that is for building resilience, well-being, and consistently being in a place where I feel resourced so that I can support people and do the work that I feel that is important for me to do. And it was on this Embodied Facilitators course known as EFC that I realized that I had a wealth of experience in embodying archetypes. In fact, I used the archetypes as my exam for the course. And that I really cultivated a lot of experience of archetypes through my personal growth journey. So by accessing our wisdom through the body, we are so much more capable and able to explore and fulfill our potential in far more ways than we ever really realize. And archetypes and embodiment are one of the ways in which I take people on that journey. So that is kind of, for me, the background of why of the work that I do. And one of the reasons that I do it is because when I was very young, my brother took his own life. And I also experienced quite a lot of emotional neglect when I was a child. And so martial arts and embodiment and the archetypes, among other things like meditation and yoga and writing, have really helped me on my journey of reclaiming my wholeness, which is really what the Embodying Archetypes for Personal Growth journey is about. It's about finding ways to come back to your wholeness. And that is why that journey is so important and so valuable to me. So should we start doing some movement? Yeah, let's start getting up and doing some stuff. So just before we do that, just a few guidelines. So I know we're recording, but confidentiality is really important. So please feel free to only share, particularly verbally, if you're happy for what you're saying to be shared on the recording. But also know that when you share stuff in the chat, that isn't made public. But for respect of the people that are on the call, please respect people's confidentiality, particularly in the breakout rooms, because we're going to have a session in breakout rooms as well. And when people do share, a second point, please be respectful of the fact that people are sharing. So I invite you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your body as well. And to really respect the fact that when someone is sharing, that you have an important role as a witness to that listening. So that's really important. And to say that if you can just do that and listen and not feel the need to give advice, because that's not really the purpose of the sharing process. It's about sharing, listening, and witnessing. The other important point is that around freedom and choice. So I'm going to invite you to do stuff. Please don't feel that you have to do anything. Everything that I suggest is just that. It's a suggestion. So if you're feeling like you don't want to do something, then please don't do it. If you'd rather do the movements seated rather than standing, then that's absolutely fine. If you'd rather not do them at all, that is also completely fine. Just if you're struggling with anything, then as I said right at the beginning, please reach out to Julie and she'll be able to give you some support. Okay, so does everyone feel happy with that? Just again, another thumbs up just for safety and make sure that we're happy. Brilliant. So we're going to run through 4 archetypes. Thanks for the thumbs up, Claire. So we're going to run through them on Sovereign, Magician, the Lover Archetype, and finally the Warrior Archetype. And we're going to be asking 3 basic questions again and again and again, an embodied inquiry. And Julie is going to throw those questions up in the chat so that you all have them to refer to. So that would be really, really great if you can do that. And so the first one is, where do you notice this in your life? The second, where do you need this more in your life? And the third one is, how does this archetype sabotage the achievement of your goals or your desires and how you want to show up in your various life situations? So we're going to keep returning back to that. Okay. So thanks for putting those in the chat there, Julie, so that you can keep going back to that. So let us start with sovereign. So I invite you to stand up with me. If you'd rather stay seated, that is absolutely fine. You don't need to be on the screen, so I don't need to see you. But it might be helpful for you if you can see me, so that you can copy what it is that I'm doing. And hopefully you can hear what I'm saying as well. So that, does the sound okay, Julie? Just a thumbs up. That's brilliant, brilliant. So sovereign is about being grounded, being confident, being in touch with the very essence of who you are. In other words, being in touch with your sovereignty. And there are lots of forces in our day-to-day life that can pull us away from that. But really what we're studying or exploring now is getting back into touch with our sovereignty. So for those of you that do yoga, this is similar to the mountain pose. So have your feet flat on the floor. If you're seated, keep your feet flat on the floor and sit with your bum just on the edge of the seat so that your back isn't leaning back into the chair, okay? So if you want to just sit, then we're just focusing on this alignment between your hips and your spine, your shoulders and your head. If you're standing, then it's the alignment between your feet, the hips, the shoulders and the head as well. So allow your eyes just to focus forward. Take a moment to let your body settle as you're standing. And begin to let your breathing slow, maybe become slightly deeper. If you want to, you can extend your outward breath, which helps you feel more relaxed. If you're feeling a little stressed, a little anxious. And start by relaxing the muscles at the front of the face, your tongue, your jaw, relaxing your chest, relaxing your belly, relaxing the muscles of the pelvis. And as those muscles relax, if you start to notice that your body feels a bit maybe out of alignment, then feel free to move a little bit so that your skeleton begins to relax and align in a way that feels like it supports you. One of the qualities of sovereign is that it offers support, it offers structure, it offers organization. So as you relax more, hopefully what you're starting to notice is that your weight is dropping down into the ground. So around your pelvis, but also dropping down into the floor. And have it now so that your weight feels evenly distributed through your feet. So you're not on the balls of your feet, maybe stumbling forward, but you're not on the heels of the feet, rocking back, that your weight is even. And then as you relax into the floor, you should feel grounded. And grounded is one of the qualities of sovereign, like you're connected to the physical world. But also when you relax and let your weight drop, what you also might notice is that the ground pushes back up. So as the ground does that, maybe you start to feel a little lightness, like your body feels lighter, that your body feels taller, like you're being pushed up towards the ceiling. So not only are you connected to the ground and the physical world of physical materialism, but you're also connected to the higher energies, the universe, maybe to the divine, depending on how you think about these things, something larger. And the thing about sovereign is that it bridges those two worlds, the physical and the spiritual, yeah, the material and the energetic. That's one of the gifts and one of the powers of sovereign. So as you begin to feel into your body like this, you're feeling grounded and feeling light. Now begin to think, what areas of my life feel like this? In what areas of my life do I feel like I claim my sovereignty? And just to notice in your body where your sovereignty feels most present, but where does it show up? And also, where does it not show up? Where does it feel like I don't own my sovereignty? Where have I given my sovereignty away? Maybe it's in certain relationships, maybe it's at work, maybe you feel that it feels like that at home sometimes. Maybe there are certain situations where you feel that you give your sovereignty away. Just noticing that for yourself. And then finally, looking at how the sovereign might sabotage us. So I'm just going to stand sideways to give you that sense, to be able to see the differences. So, for example, if you're not feeling really connected to your sovereignty, sometimes what you can do is you can really kind of like push your chest forward, like you're trying to, it's like bravado, like you're trying to seem more confident than you really feel. And when you do that, sometimes it feels like you're bringing the weight onto the balls of your feet. So you feel a little bit unstable. So that's one embodiment of how your saboteurs might show up, where you're feeling not connected to your sovereignty. So there's that imbalance and that insecurity. And also you might notice when you're like that, that your head comes up. So you're not focusing forward anymore, that you're looking up and out and feeling a little bit off balance and not centered and not grounded. Or you might feel yourself shrink. So there's this feeling of collapsing, where the spine begins to curve inwards on itself. Maybe you can feel your weight going down. You can feel the weight on your heels. So there's this sense of feeling quite small. And noticing also maybe that your eyes are going down. So there's this sense of, you know, where do I do this in my life? Where am I finding myself being small? But also, where am I also finding myself being too big, too loud, like I'm trying to compensate? And then from there, returning back to that place of sovereignty, where your weight feels balanced through your feet, your weight, your spine is aligned and your posture is strong. Your body can relax. You feel grounded, but you also feel supported by the ground as the ground pushes you up, makes you feel light. And feel in a place where you can feel that you can hold your responsibilities lightly rather than them weigh you down. So again, just briefly, where does this feel familiar? Where does this feel like it's lacking and that you'd like to inject more of your sovereignty into that? And also, where do those saboteurs, where do you notice them playing out in your life? So taking a moment just to shake your arms and legs off, take a moment to come back to the screen. And you might feel that you want to take some notes, to write down for yourself your own insights into what you've noticed about that sovereign exploration. And I invite you to write in the chat any of your observations that you'd like to share. or if anyone would like to share on video or to unmute yourself, then that would be also welcome. You can just unmute yourself. You have that control to do that. But feel free to share if you'd like to. Sometimes sharing is really valuable because it gives different insights. It gives different perspectives on something rather than just your own view. So we've got written here, I tend to embody the feeling of the sovereign posture when out in nature. Yeah. Nature is a really wonderful place to feel that you can tap into your sovereign. Yeah, it's really wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Great. Anyone else? Can see some people fiercely scribbling. Great. Anyone would like to share on screen? Otherwise, we'll move on to the magician. Julie?
So there's a message saying on stage.
Oh, I missed something. Has that gone to a private message?
Yes, it has gone to a private message.
Oh, okay. So
would you like to expand on that? No, not you, David.
So on stage, is that all that they wrote on stage?
Yeah.
Okay. Like when acting improv. Yeah, great. Yeah, improv, all kinds of improv is a really empowering place to be. And just being in that flow is a really wonderful place to be if you can allow yourself to get there. So yeah, really great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Great. So let's move on to, we got Lisa. Des is going to say something. Thank you, Des.
Sorry, David. I was busy scribbling those notes beforehand.
Good stuff.
And just what occurred to me in the context of several contexts where I felt as I was doing the pose that the sovereign may come out. But in particular, what struck me was how in the work environment, both the saboteurs and the excess of sovereign can be present. It struck me, and I could actually visualize myself in that point where I was hunched over, eyes down with the burden of work, and why can't other people take this off me?
Yeah.
And yet the other side of that being overly strong and not allowing people to take it off me.
Yes.
And it's just interesting to me to feel that context in the same environment.
Yeah.
You know, the sovereign and both the saboteurs coming into play at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think one of the really great things about sovereign is that if you can get that mid ground right, then it gives other people permission to do the same.
Yeah.
So by shrinking back, people feel the need to compensate often, and when you push forward, people feel the need of sometimes to shrink back in response. But if you get that middle ground, you're in this really beautiful space where people feel safe enough and confident enough to be able to embody their own sovereignty as well, which is really important. And I'm reminded of the Marianne Williamson quote about, the thing that we fear is not our darkness, but our light. And there's a line in that quote where she talks about, by doing that, by embracing our light, we unconsciously give people permission to do the same. And for me, that sovereign embodiment is a really great opportunity to give people permission to do that for themselves. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, a real life example. So thank you for sharing. So let's move on to magician. So again, an invitation to stand up if you like. And so let's start from sovereign. So let's go back to this mountain pose, or this ready stance, as we often refer to in martial arts as well. Eyes focus forward. And whilst sovereign is really good for being grounded and being this bridge between the physical and the spiritual, very often magician bounces between those two worlds. So magician becomes very much in the physical world, but the magician's inspiration comes from that spiritual realm, from that energetic realm. So the pose for magician starts by, instead of having the feet flat on the floor, just lift your heels. And just lift them as much as you feel that you can. You don't have to be like you're in 6-inch heels, but just enough to feel a little less stable. Because a lot of creativity comes not from being stable, but from actually being a little bit on the edge, a little bit off balance. So as the weight comes up, maintaining your posture all the way through, what you're going to do now is bring your hands up and reach up towards the ceiling. So you're looking up towards the ceiling, like your fingers are like little antennae, and they're reaching out for inspiration that comes from out there, from broader perspective, from that energetic world. And you might find that as you're doing that, that as you're finding that inspiration coming to you, that you might want to reach for it as you're thinking about your life situations, reaching for it and bringing it down into your body. So maybe reaching and bringing it down to your heart or to your gut area or into your head, just playing around with that idea. But to begin with, just working with this idea of reaching up and being inspired by broader perspective, by the energy around you, by thinking out of the box, basically, and keeping that lightness. So just feel that in your body, get a sense of that, and think to yourself, again, what areas of your life does this show up? And what areas of your life does it not show up? And it feels like it would be a really good resource to be able to tap into. So there's this lightness of feel to your magician. And then when you look at the saboteur side of it, so the side where perhaps it's getting in the way of you creating the life that you want for yourself, you've got a couple of areas. One is if you reach up to here, but you drop your heels, so your weight is still down on the floor. It's like almost like you're going through the motions, but you're not getting the inspiration that you're really looking for. So there's this sense of feeling grounded, and it just doesn't have that same energy. It doesn't have that same creative spark that it does where you're actually up on the balls of your feet and feeling a little bit lighter. Okay. And the other area, or another area, is where you're here, but you're reaching. Can you see how I'm sort of like bent backwards? So again, this is totally off balance, and you're going to end up falling backwards. So again, feeling a little bit, perhaps too much out of control, so that you end up not being able to control your body. And the last area is what you're doing with your arms. So there could be this thing where you bring your arms too close together so that you're not open to inspiration. Or there's the opposite, where your arms are too far apart and you're like so open to inspiration that you feel overwhelmed. So there's those ways in which the body can show how we're feeling overwhelmed by things and feeling that saboteur playing out. So returning, whatever your exploration is, returning to that magician pose. And then from there, dropping the heels, dropping the arms slowly. And then returning to that sovereign pose. Feet grounded, Eyes focus forward, arms relaxed. Feeling the lightness of the body because the ground's pushing you up. And feeling that sense of confidence, that sense of groundedness, that sense of claiming your sovereignty. And then again, taking a moment to shake your arms and legs off and returning again to the screen. And again, feel free to make some notes on your insights, where you might be noticing this magician in your life, where in your life you might need it more, and the ways in which the saboteur might be playing out a little. As well. And again, if you feel that you'd like to share in the chat some of your insight, or share on the camera, go on then, Lisa.
Well, Desi's insight was we need a taller ceiling because we can touch the boat.
Ah, well.
But my insight is I didn't realise how much I love magician.
Right.
And while I'm off work at the moment, and I've got all this time, I'm exploring so much spiritually, so opening up. And the more I can open up, the more I'm actually enjoying and embracing it. It doesn't feel like it's out of control.
Great.
Whereas I think maybe when I was younger and not understanding quite so much as I do now, even though I know nothing, but it just feels now I've got the space to embrace it and to learn. So yeah, I really love magician, but sovereignty I struggled with. Right.
Yeah. 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 Different. So these things aren't static. Our relationship with the different archetypes is changing all the time. So there'll be periods in our life where we feel more open to magician. And then there might be periods in our life where we feel more open to other archetypes. So it's this, again, this dynamic flow all the time. So yeah, someone's written here, I find that creativity comes easily to me, but usually when I'm more relaxed, yeah, a stressful job prevents the creative process for me. Yeah, very, very, very common. Very, very, a story that I hear over and over and over again. So again, for me anyway, there is this thing of taking the time to be in my sovereignty. And then from that place where I'm feeling calmer and more grounded, then I can move into that magician archetype and begin to play more creatively from there. But yes, getting into that place where I don't feel so stressed and anxious is really important as part of that process. For me anyway. Some people thrive on that. So it is just a question of what works best for you. And that's why I want to be able to introduce these concepts to you. And what I love about the archetypes is that there is this element of metaphor, so that you can work with the metaphor in whatever way feels right for you, whatever feels most relevant for you. And I don't want to be prescriptive about it has to be a certain way or it has to look like this. It doesn't. And each archetype will have a very personal feel and look and act in a certain way. So it's a personal journey, which is really important to appreciate. Very good. Thank you for sharing again. So someone has written as I am rather closed and accepting inspiration. Body just reacted to this thought expressed, and those hands a bit wider open, then felt much better and more joyful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, a lot of the time where people can be closed to their creativity, closed to their inspiration. Lots of reasons why that can be the case. So again, because of this mind-body connection, or because, if you like, that the mind and the body are one, there is this thing of we can work with the body to help open the mind. We can work with the body if we notice how our body might be closed. If we can consciously open the body, then that can open us to inspiration, creativity, imagination, or whatever it is. So thank you for that sharing. Really, really great insight. So on a similar vein, we're going to work with another archetype. This time we're going to work with Lover. So this is also really about being open. So I invite you to join me again. And if you want to remain seated, then that's absolutely fine. But if you'd like to stand, then it gives us more to play with. So again, rather than standing in this sovereign pose, what I'd like us to do is actually start our exploration with Lover with a really intimate self-care pose. So you can do this seated or standing. So if you bring your right hand over your heart, so like underneath your left arm, and bring the left arm up and over onto your opposite shoulder. So it's like you're hugging yourself. And allow your head to drop onto your right shoulder a little bit, as if you're kind of cuddling yourself. And there you'll find that your kind of spine is slightly curved inwards. There's a sort of an introspective quality to this. You might even want to close your eyes. Or if you keep them open, you might want to look down at the ground. But the self-care pose, Lover, is all about your relationship with yourself, with other people, and the world around you. So it all starts from this place of self-care. And you might even find yourself wanting to rock, a bit like you might do with a baby, because you're trying to soothe the baby. It's a nice little rocking feeling that can be lovely. And again, asking yourself the question, where does this show up in my life? Where do I take care of myself? And in what areas could I take care of myself more? Where do I not do it at all? And just to notice that from the sort of saboteur perspective as well, we could bring our head up. So it's like we're going through the motions of self-care, but we're not really allowing ourselves to really feel it. So the head is just looking straight ahead rather than being to one side. So having the bubble bath, but not really allowing yourself to savor it. Having the chill out evening on the sofa, but actually feeling anxious around it. So allowing returning to that self-care. Or that maybe your hands are gripping yourself too tight, so you're giving yourself a hard time. It's almost like a desperate feeling. Or that your hands are like they're kind of soft and limp and not really feeling like they're very nurturing at all. Whereas in real self-care, your hands are quite tender, like you're holding something precious, which you are. So again, just sort of exploring that a little bit before we move into the next quality of the Lover archetype, which is about receiving. So we can't give anything until we've received. We can't give anything until we're resourced and feeling resilient. So the next one from self-care is to move into receiving. So taking a small step back with one leg so that your weight is on that one leg, and allowing your hands to open as if you're waiting to receive something. And again, getting a sense of, again, the curve of the body so that there's this sense of welcoming in, which is really welcoming. And again, asking yourself, where does this feel familiar in my life? Where does this feel lacking? And to ask yourself the question, okay, from here, where do my saboteurs play in? So for the receiving pose, there's this sense of maybe dropping your hands, like if someone were to give you something that it would just drop on the floor. So your hands are down to bring them up. Or that if your hands are wide apart like this, so that if they gave it to you, it would just drop down on the floor in the middle as well. So bringing your hands more central. And perhaps even dropping back, so bringing your weight so far back that you're off balance and not being able to hold it. Or even bringing your weight forward so that you're not, it's almost like you're grasping for it rather than graciously receiving. And then finally, the final one with this saboteur is to bring the hands up. So it's almost like your hands are a little bit too high, so you can't receive because your hands are up in the way and they're creating this barrier. Yeah. So again, returning to that receiving posture. And then from there, having received, we're looking at now stepping forward so the weight comes over the front leg and extending the arms so we're giving. So keeping the back straight, keeping that strong posture, but extending forward and giving. So where am I generous in my life? And maybe doing the movement several times and coming from that heart. So you're kind of moving your hand onto your heart space and then moving forward, giving from the heart in that really generous way. Again, hands too wide could be a saboteur thing. Hands too close together or not reaching forward enough. Maybe even leaning in so that you feel like you're over giving. Or maybe leaning back as you give and not wanting to really commit and give generously. And also dropping your hands, so giving but dropping so that you're not giving fully, or pulling your hands back. So lots of ways in which we can explore where that saboteur could be playing out there a little bit. But really working with this sense of generosity from that lover archetype. Good. And then from here, stepping back to that self-care pose, right hand under, left hand over the shoulder. And returning to that place of loving myself. I can't love another unless I love myself. I can't love the world unless I love myself. And just enjoying that self-comfort and self-care. And then from there, relaxing the arms, bringing the head back, shaking the body. And again, taking a moment to return to the screen and taking some notes on whatever your insights might be from that exploration. And again, if you feel like you'd like to share in the chat or share by speaking, just any of your insights to get a sense of what might be showing up for you. So the Lover archetype is a really rich archetype because there are so many nuances to what it takes to build really strong relationships. And to be able to do that consistently, no matter how difficult life can get. Great. So would anyone like to share, again, either in the chat or on screen? Otherwise, we'll move on to our final archetype. Okay. So one more time, stepping up and doing the warrior archetype, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with yoga. So if you'd like to step up one more time. So as I said earlier, warrior is about commitment, about focus, about determination. It could even be about fierceness. So if you allow your legs to come apart so that like you're on a tightrope, and you bring your arms up to this nice strong position. So for example, if your left leg is bent, then you're looking over your left arm and focusing forward. So you're just looking straight over the left shoulder. And if your leg gets tired, then feel free to swap sides or rest your arms. Don't feel like this isn't a war of attrition that you have to make it all the way through. But it is that thing of just feeling the quality of the posture. Maybe getting a bit of a burn in that front leg. So just sticking with that a little bit if it's not painful, but focusing on your determination. And because the arms are open, then the chest and the stomach and the pelvis are open as well. So there's also this element of being seen and taking up space. So these are the qualities of warrior. So where do these qualities show up in your life? And where do you feel like you might need more of it? And from a saboteur perspective, just noticing if I change sides, just noticing, maybe your arms are dropping so that you're lacking that commitment to the posture, maybe easing the weight off that front leg. And that the eyes maybe don't focus clearly on a thing, that they're moving around. So there isn't necessarily that focus to the posture as well. And just noticing how that might relate to situations in your life. Maybe you slouch a little bit in your posture as well, so your commitment's not as firm as you'd like it to be, or your focus isn't as concentrated as it needs to be. And then from there, relaxing the arms, bringing the legs back. And again, just taking a few moments to reflect on the warrior archetype and to think about where it shows up in your life, where it feels like it's missing, and where you need more of it. And having a sense of how that plays out a little bit in your life with the saboteurs. And again, if anyone would like to share in the chat or on screen, that would be great. There's a pussycat there. Extra points for pussycats.
Can I ask a question, please, David?
You may.
So I really like warrior, and I find a lot of strength in warrior, and I use it a lot. But I tend to find when I'm in warrior, my saboteur is like a monkey. You know, because I'm strong in it, I use humor and everything as well. And I don't know if that's a defensive mechanism.
Could be.
So
yeah, humor can be. Depends what you mean by monkey, but it sounds like you mean around this monkey thing of playing around and joking. But I think, yeah, monkey, the sort of the joking thing can often be a defense mechanism for feeling that things are too serious or perhaps too intense, where you're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So that may be the case. But yeah, again, explore it. But, you know, there's something there. There's something there that clearly is being like signposted to you. So just observe that and see what transpires as you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. So I think what we'll do is we've got relatively small numbers and we've got one pair. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 7 people. So perhaps we could do a 3 and a 4 as breakout rooms, Julie. So if Lisa Treacher, the 2 of them can go with one person and the other, or 2 people, sorry, and the other 4 can go together, then we'll just give 5 minutes to just sort of talk about what you noticed, what you observed. Someone's written here, sometimes difficult to stand up for beliefs when lack of confidence. Yeah, exactly. So again, warrior is a great one for, you know, defending your values, defending what you stand for. And so again, working with that archetype can be a great one of being able to do that. Okay, so if we just give 5 minutes, Julie, that would be great. Julie's put the question.
Yeah, so there are actually so 8 participants, well 9 with Lisa and Des, including yourself. So it's going to be 4 and 5. Is that all right?
Well, I won't go in.
Okay.
And
then it's going to be 4 and 4. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, great. So if you guys can do that. Oh, looks like someone's dropped off. Okay, so yeah, see you in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And only feel free to go if you want. Don't feel like you have to go. You're welcome to stay with us at the front if you prefer.
Okay.
Okay, so no one's there on their own?
No, there are 3 people in one and 3 in the other. Yeah.
Great, yeah. Right, Artie's gone. Great.
Yeah, so now there are 4 people in one and 3 in the other. Is that okay?
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and Claire did send a message, said, my apologies, I can really hear the kids know, upstairs.
Yeah, it's always the problem with doing this stuff from home. Are you watching the time?
We've got 18 minutes.
Yeah, but for the breakout room.
For the breakout rooms. So did you say 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Fantastic. Cool. I find it really, really difficult when people aren't responsive. It's a real challenge.
Yeah. No, I think it's normal when it's not a very big group like this.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Oh yes, and there's another message saying thank you very much for this valuable session.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Artie, brilliant. Fab. Okay. Were you doing the poses?
Do you want to pause the recording for now, or?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Right. Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. So how was that for everyone? Just anyone want to share, again, either in the chat or in the video, any insights, your insights, not obviously sharing what other people said for themselves?
I just said in the breakout room, we often talk about self-care, and I would argue that I do a lot of self-care, but I'm often told that maybe I don't. And the one that I couldn't feel or couldn't connect with was the initial pose in the Lover.
Self-care, right?
And that really struck me quite starkly. Actually, it's making me feel quite emotional now about how I didn't connect with that.
Yeah.
And it was the only one I didn't connect with. It was the only one I couldn't feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quite stark.
Yeah. Really, again, really, really powerful. And again, it's just that thing of being gentle with oneself and not giving, again, self-care, if you like, you know, not giving oneself a hard time if one is, you know, there are the pose that I really struggle with is that magician one where my hands go up, and I struggle with that for lots of reasons, and I worked on it for months and felt nothing. and then you know, eventually I started to feel a little bit, but it is that thing of it doesn't always, you know, it doesn't always resonate.
Yeah.
For lots of reasons. But thank you for sharing. Joe, I got a sense you wanted to say something, but that may not have been the case. Did you want to share? You don't have to.
Yeah, I can.
Wait, I thought I saw something.
I didn't have something. I was doing something else. I was writing notes, actually.
All right.
But yeah, I noticed it's the first time I've come across this. So very new to me. But I could see aspects of each that I could connect with and others that I couldn't. And I was saying in the breakout room that one of them is the warrior. You know, when you said notice if your eyes are darting all over the place, and they were. And I can see that there is a lack of focus. It's like I'm good in the pose, I'm strong in the pose, I know what I want and I know what I need. And following through on that is a whole different ball game. So yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. So yeah, and again, that's a really powerful example for me of how, you know, that mind-body link, you know, and how these little signs of the body can tell us, and so we can begin to use those to give us that follow through, for example, or give us that self-care that we perhaps feel that we need. Brilliant. So so thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that you've all taken time out of your busy lives and taken time away from doing other things this evening to join us today, particularly one of us with the
Lithuania
independence celebration. So that's very, very admirable. So thank you very much for that. So our intention today, me and Thea, when we created this, was to give you a standalone introduction to archetypes so that you could walk away with some practical tools that could support you on your life journey. And it sounds like, based on some of the feedback, that we've managed to achieve that. So I'm very pleased. And if you are intrigued with this and you would like to take your exploration further, we've got a couple of options. Thea and I will be running a second one of these sessions in a couple of weeks' time. Julie's going to put the link in for that. That's going to be another hour and a half. But instead of focusing on the embodied yoga principles, we're going to be focusing on the 4 elements model and how we can use that to access the wisdom of the archetypes. So yeah, that link's in there now. It's also completely free. So there are lots of people that have signed up to both. So if you haven't and you'd like to, then feel free to just click on that link and you'll be able to do that straight away, because it'll probably open up in your browser. The second option is a paid course, which is the 8-week course that I've been talking about since sort of in different moments through the intro. And so that runs on Wednesday evenings from February the 10th through till March the 31st. And they run for a couple of hours. So again, that's 7 o'clock this time through till 9 o'clock UK time. And we'll be taking you through the hero's journey, which is why we mentioned that at the beginning, and working with the archetypes and with embodiment to explore your sovereignty and how you can go on the journey of reclaiming that in whatever areas of your life you feel that you might need to do that. And so this hero's journey thing is like an endless journey towards deepening your wholeness and your personal growth. So you can use it for the big questions like purpose and mission, but you can also use it for sort of day-to-day things like about making choices around challenges and goals and following through on certain desires that you want for yourself. So overall, the course will give you a process to enjoy more deeply your work and your relationships, and of course, life itself. Each week we'll take a deeper dive into each archetype, a different archetype each week, showing you how your archetypes can serve and sometimes don't serve you on your hero's journey. And the middle weeks, weeks 4 and 5, are the deep dive weeks with Warrior, which sets you up for taking embodied action in life. So there's a real kind of deep dive right in the middle of that we like to let you know about, so that you're sort of prepared. We don't just spring it on you. And our request is, if you want to come along to that, then, you know, we'd love to have you there. But please make sure that you can come along to every single session so that you don't miss anything. We don't record those sessions because we want to give people a safe space to be able to really you know, be open and share in a way that feels really productive and useful for you. So if I could ask Julie to put the link in for that. There's an early bird offer until February the 3rd. So that's for £195 sterling. And then from February the 4th, the price goes up to £245. And then that price stays consistent right through to the end. Okay, so we've got just a couple of minutes for any questions. Does anyone have any questions that you'd like me to answer right away? Any questions at all, either just on the video or in the chat? That's fine. No? Okay, brilliant. So thank you. So just one final thing before we finish then. What will you be taking away with you from today's session?
May I start? I just feel a very special gratitude for you, David, tonight, and for Julie also for assisting. It's I'm taking with me this joyful, what's that word? I forgot it. Revelation, which is alive in me again today. That there is mind, body, and you know, there is this really sacred feeling when you feel that, David, as you mentioned, that with changing of your hands, widening up or narrowing down, the body is changing position, and then something inside just opening or squeezing. And this is like every time I feel like I feel it for the first time and that I cannot grasp it. And this body wisdom, this body mind connection is so special. So it's your emphasis on that while walking with the body, we can change the archetype presence inside of us as well.
Yeah,
for me, it's a very big gift. So I'm very grateful. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Ruta. That's lovely. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So Wendy has said lots of things to think over and focus more on things I'm lacking. Thank you. And Faye, thank you. You have me thinking about applying archetypes to life and purpose. Wonderful, wonderful. Great. Got time for one more video share if anyone wants to. Otherwise, we'll be able to wrap it up with a minute to go. How's that for good timing? Wonderful experience and reminders. Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you, everyone. I hope to see you on at least the second free session, or perhaps even on the full course. But I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank Julie for being a wonderful tech host and for stepping in like a valiant warrior to help me out in my moment of need. So I really, really appreciate that. So thank you, Julie. So I invite you finally just to unmute yourselves and say goodbye in whatever language and in whatever way you would like to. And then that does mark the end of the call. So thank you for everyone, to everyone. Thank you for coming. And I hope to see you on another event. Good night.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, David. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
good.
David.
Goodbye.